Afternoon, everyone. Restoring lost mangrove forests is a practical and meaningful contribution to climate action in solidarity with vulnerable communities. It strengthens nature's own method for climate balance, tested over millions of years. Those are the words of our founder, Dr. Arne Viertoff. Mangroves. They are the most undervalued assets in global finance, and we, Worldview International Foundation, have built the infrastructure to change that. The coast, to us, is not the backdrop. The coast is the system. Invest in it. And it returns to you carbon, community, and coastlines for generations. What is infrastructure? Critical infrastructure. Now, we can look at infrastructure as assets that sustain our way of life, national security, economic stability, buildings, roads, internet, quantum, computing, infrastructure, building it out, data centers. But what if the coast itself is infrastructure too? Introducing coastal infrastructure. For us, a collective mission where public and private partnerships collaborate to create coastal infrastructure projects. Community first. We're creating infrastructure that's built with people, not around them. Fisheries. Restoring the marine nurseries and coastal families that coastal families depend on. Employment, resilience, education. With employment, we call our community members, not jobs. We're not creating just jobs, we're creating livelihoods and long-term community partnerships. Resilience. The mangrove is one of the most resilient assets, reducing climate disaster risk for vulnerable coastlines. And of course, a key component of what we do is education, environment programs, and that empower the next generation. A triple impact, one ecosystem, three returns. We mitigate, we adapt, and we generate. Sequester of blue carbon at scale, adaptations, protecting coastlines from storms, flooding, sea level rise, and to regenerate. Restoring biodiversity. Biodiversity, you will hear Minister Navarro say that over and over again. We're restoring it through the mangroves and reviving fishery and coastal communities. Worldview International Foundation, a little bit of history about what we do and our success. We have successfully planted 110,000 hectares. That is millions, over 100 million mangrove trees planted. We've created 140,000, not jobs, but community members participated in our venture. We have over 46 years of restoration experience behind our work in development, and 7 verified carbon projects in Asia with Vera. Our project was one of the first in Southeast Asia to be verified. Our project today is not in Asia. We are looking towards Panama, the Panama Mangrove Restoration Project in the Darien District, bringing the model of developing high-integrity mangrove restoration to Panama. Our goal is bridging global climate goals and local priorities to regenerate ecosystems, working with communities of Panama and generating verified carbon credits, backed by Panama's first 100 million blue carbon investment fund, which we invite you to join. Local to global is our mission. One project, global impact. From New York, where we're headquartered, our Worldview USA, with capital and governance, our banking structure, our legal is in New York City. Panama, providing the restoration, the community, and the project. In Asia, our project is currently, our first project was in Myanmar, Southeast Asia, where we still have people on the ground. Panama's first blue carbon investment, which becomes a local to global initiative. How will we do it? Worldview Las Americas. We are expanding into Panama. Green Capital Partners will be our asset partners working on the Blue Carbon Fund, and of course, our partnership with the Minister of Environment in Panama. Our goal is a $100 million closed multi-class public fund offering with a 25-year term. anchored in mangrove restoration and blue carbon credits, backed by a real asset, the mangrove ecosystem. We're looking to create a new asset class at the intersection of nature, resilience, and investable returns. Mangrove restoration in Panama is not a concept. It is a structured, finance-ready platform with institutional architecture. And Panama is where our next venture scales. Panama offers a strategic jurisdiction of favorable investment conditions with emerging carbon markets. It's a replicable place. It's a place where we can replicate the successful model across Central America, the Caribbean, small islands, and Asia. Our project, Mangrove Restoration in Panama, will support UN Sustainable Development Goal number 9, that is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. SDG 9 calls for infrastructure that is resilient, sustainable, and inclusive. Reforestation of mangroves accomplishes all 3. Reimagining mangroves. I want to thank you so much for your time this afternoon. This is our QR code where you can go online and you can find information on our public-private partnerships, the first blue carbon fund in Panama, and I hope to see you in the mangrove forest.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here with you all today. Amazing presentation. Thank you for your incredible work.
Thank you.
You know, mangrove forests are disappearing 3 times faster than tropical rainforests. So I think this topic is more important than ever. And I have so many questions to ask you. I wanted to start by touching on something that you mentioned on one of your first slides. I wanted you to tell us a little bit more about what you mean when you say infrastructure built with people, but not around them. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, it's interesting because for many years we would go in and we talk about the mangrove forest and including people involved, actually. And when we tend to think of infrastructure, building, roads, bridges, that's often done and people watch it being done. We, of course, benefit when we drive our cars or we go in, but with a mangrove as infrastructure, it's built with people, not around them. So we get to include people as we build this infrastructure. And I can't think of many infrastructure unless we have construction, but the very people who are going to benefit become the stakeholders.
Amazing. And after all, people are part of nature, right? We're
Yes.
part of the ecosystems that sustain us. That's actually one of the key principles of the Rights of Nature framework, that humans are part of nature and nature has intrinsic value. So I love that.
And particularly indigenous communities who are vulnerable and living amongst the forest.
Exactly. So when we talk about these large projects, what does it really take to execute and finance some of these large projects on the ground? What does that look like?
The finance, yes. It's interesting for us because we've been in a really exciting opportunity. We started in 2012 when it was at the cusp of VERA and verified carbon credits. We were very successful in the beginning to have a lot of impact investors. There you get people who tend to understand the complexities, the long term, the risks. In our first project, we do a lot of public-private partnerships, so we've been very fortunate to have support from the United Nations, various governments around the world, grant funding, philanthropists, and again, impact investors. As you scale, and as our project takes wind in Panama, it's become very important for us to expand to a more sophisticated financial instrument, and that is the Blue Carbon Fund. One of the visions that my partner had was to create a financial instrument that would be diverse, multi-class, that would allow us to not only take one type of investor, but now we can take institutional, small, large, and let everyone be a part of restoring the mangrove forest.
Wow. There's a lot that goes into it, but I'm glad we have you to really lead the way on this. And thinking about Panama and next steps, what were some of those reasons that maybe you didn't mention of why you chose Panama as your next stop?
It's interesting because Panama, we know the the country and the climate. the various seasons, the diversity. One of the reasons that was very exciting was Minister Navarro, the current government of Panama. He is an environmentalist, and in his soul and in his speech, and as a politician, he's leading the way. So it was very exciting for us because you cannot do a mangrove reforestation scale project without the support of the government that is there. So that was really important. Once we had the support of the government and the people, getting the people to be involved and engaged. We've spent the past year doing the research and development, going in with the drone technologies and looking at the ripe area. And so all the mechanics that work, the government, the people, the local communities like Ancon, who people have been on the ground, everything was ripe. Panama is also in a unique position where there's not hurricanes. Which is a real blessing for a place like Panama and its neighbors. What's exciting about that is Panama gets the opportunity to lead the way for Central America, Caribbean, and Latin America. They're in this unique position for growth of a carbon market, the banking infrastructure, and now is the time to invest in Panama.
Thinking about Panama and the different ecosystems you said you're already looking at, do you know where some of those mangrove forests are within the country, like the different provinces or their names?
They're quite a lot around. The issue with us, because we have been on the ground when you're doing a mangrove reforestation project, there are a lot of complexities. There could be shrimp farmers, there could be biodiversity, there could be indigenous species. So right now we're looking in the Darien area, and we have a current MOU with the government of Panama for up to 10,000 hectares as a start.
Wow, incredible. That's quite an ambitious goal. I love it. You know, Minister Navarro, I think his main characteristic is his ambition. He wants a lot done, and he wants it in half the time. And it's one of the reasons I really, really admire him.
Getting it done, less talk, and a lot more doing. And the urgency is here. I spoke at a conference with for the islands, and I said to them, if we don't protect the mangroves, there will be nothing to protect. If we don't plant, we're losing the coast. There's going to be nothing to plant on. That is not me with hoax. That is true. That is accurate. And we saw with the hurricane in Jamaica, places that people wanted to encounter, they could not. It was no longer there. So we need to act, and we need to act fast.
And, you know, science tells us that the mangrove rainforest can store up to 5 times more carbon than tropical rainforests as well. So their importance really in a lot of the discussions here today is just undeniable. So success, you've had success previously with over 110,000 hectares being restored in Southeast Asia and Myanmar. So how easy do you think it will be to translate that level of success into the project in Panama?
I think at this point, what's our advantage is we have expertise and we have experience. Every country, we expect that Panama is different, and it's a different country, the different complexities, but the Blue Carbon Fund gives us something we did not have when we started in Myanmar, which is to have access to capital that will allow for us to have better technology, again, quantum computing, and looking at how we can use technology to do things that we had to do with our team. Humans can do so much, but with the opportunity to scale and to go into Colombia and along the coast, with the capital that we raise, we then have the opportunity to scale faster and grow stronger.
How many years do you think it would take to get to that level of restoration in Panama?
We're currently in the early stages of the fund. Green Capital Partners is our asset manager working. They worked on the first blue bond in Panama. So they are already on the ground. We expect to have this within the next 5 months. Planting a mangrove is a long-term investment. So once we start putting the first propagal in the ground, we have pre-planting costs that start immediately when you do a mangrove before you can plant. As we plant the mangrove, it is a 5-year investment before they can start seeing the carbon credits in return, but this is 25 years, so we are locked in and looking for that investment long-term. So it's a long-term relationship over 25 years, but within 5 years of the investment, we start to see that. And that, of course, is dependent upon the laws, the moratorium being done, as well as we have 7 verified carbon projects that anyone can see through Vera. You can see the complexities, all the information on our projects, but that will give us, it gives us an advantage in Panama.
Another advantage in Panama, as you mentioned, law, is Panama's National Rights of Nature law that was passed in 2022. I actually proposed it to the Congressman Juan Diego Vasquez back in 2020, and it recognizes the rights of all nature, but obviously in this case mangroves, to exist and persist, to regenerate their vital cycles, to be restored, and even to have direct legal representation in court. So I think there's only 3 countries in the world with national level rights of nature laws, Panama being the 3rd. So I think out of all the countries, this is a really great place to think about restoring the mangroves. And, you know, you can even frame some of these projects in Panama as respecting the right of the mangrove to be restored as well, which is exciting.
Absolutely, and I think that takes us back to reimagining infrastructure, coastal infrastructure. We have to be able to see the mangroves. With hurricane here in the United States, was the levees broke. The levees, everyone talked about the levees, where the mangroves is stronger than any man-made levee, and it deserves to be invested, seen, and reimagined as an asset that should be invested in.
And because of its intrinsic value as well, right?
Intrinsic value even more, and hopefully we get a sort of triple bottom line with the investors.
Exactly, and I know you've been in this space for quite a long time. I'm wondering what's changed in recent years for investors and governments to finally begin seeing mangroves as a viable asset class and not only as a conservation issue?
I think now that carbon credits, I think when we started in 2012, carbon credits have been here, but there wasn't, Vera was early in the early stages, and so I hear carbon credits all the time. And for us, we are planters. We restore the forest. Carbon credits was just a viable asset to scale and do this. Now the market, it's changed quite a lot. They've raised the bar on credits, gold standards. There's a lot of regulations to be able to have a verified carbon credit, and that's where we are valuable because our expertise, our relationships with the people who are verifying your carbon credits become more valuable than it did when we started. The relationship with the government is different because we're going, in Myanmar where we started, they are in the middle of a civil war, so it's a different country. With Panama, the government supports us. So we expect to take advantage of all of those assets.
That's something Minister Navarro always says to me. He's like, take advantage of the fact that I'm the minister. Yeah. It won't be forever.
And this is the time.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm wondering next, what makes a mangrove project truly investable today in terms of the scientific integrity, governance, and return? And are there any obstacles that remain when we're talking about scaling that capital?
I think with nature investments, there are always risks, right? There are risks because it is nature. And, but I like to think there are risks with any investment. And so we have to be mindful of that. However, mangroves are such a miracle species and asset. What they do, I think the first objective for us is letting people know. I know the mangroves, you know the mangroves, and many of us may be in the States, but you go outside of here and people think we're talking about mango, the fruit. So I say, no, mangroves. But so the first thing is to the education and the awareness, right, of what the mangrove is. We are very upfront. We offer transparency. We have a very experienced legal, science-backed, and finance team that get right out front to advise of the risk when it comes to mangroves, but they also get out front to offer the opportunities. The community investment, with 140,000 community members, we saw the opportunity of fisheries and shrimp, and many of our workers able to go into places and actually sell these wonderful, wonderful new ecosystems and lifestyles and seaweeds that became an investable opportunity. Carbon offset, 5 times more greenhouse gases than the tree in the rainforest. That value of the mangrove getting a blue carbon that is in the ocean as well as the land So we get to be really excited we're often educating our investors who kind of like quantum physics go, I don't know what you're talking about, but it sounds amazing. The people are good, you're helping, and it actually is an investment. I think the biggest challenge is, again, reimagine the mangrove forest as an investable asset, right? As infrastructure. That is the challenge, because infrastructure is a bridge, I'm told, and a road. We're saying that it is also the forest.
So unfortunately, we have to go, but I think my last question was, if you had to identify a single action that people could take to inspire them to invest in mangroves, what would it be? And I think you just answered it, to reimagine them.
Reimagine, yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.